New Year's Day, 4 a.m. Athens, Alabama. Officers were already responding to a domestic violence call on Oakdale Ridge Lane when it happened. Not before they arrived. Not after. As they were pulling up, a 26-year-old woman named Alexis Garth was lying in the driveway of her own home. Shot 5 times. Her 3-year-old daughter, the little girl Alexis had positioned herself in front of in her final moments, was found hiding beneath the car in that same driveway, alone in the dark. The man who pulled the trigger did not run. He laid himself on the ground, pushed the gun away from his body, and waited. Think about that for a moment. 5 shots fired at the mother of his child, while police were seconds away, and then a calm, deliberate surrender the instant those headlights turned onto the street. No panic, no flight. Just a man who knew exactly what he had done and chose the precise moment to stop. By the time the sun rose over Limestone County, Ky'ruan Yarbrough, 20 years old, was in custody, charged with capital murder, and Alexis Garth, a mother of 2, a woman who had spent the last year trying to build something real, was gone. But this story does not start in that driveway. It starts exactly 1 year earlier. Same house, same address, a completely different moment. Before we get into it, where are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments. January 1st, 2022, same address, same driveway on Oakdale Ridge Lane. Alexis Garth was celebrating. That morning, she posted a photo on Facebook that stopped people mid-scroll. She was standing in front of her new home, her home, with Ky'ruan Yarbrough beside her. She was glowing, and the caption she chose was not subtle about what the moment meant to her. When they try to count you out, you make them count you in. We beat the odds. She meant it. Every word. Alexis was 26. Her sister Miracle Scott once said she was the kind of person who could walk into a room and change the temperature of it.
She was a light, very family-oriented, a great friend. You could talk to her about anything. She could light up a room by just walking in it, beautiful smile. Just an all-around good person. Definitely somebody who didn't deserve to die like this.
She had 2 daughters, a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old. And those 2 little girls were the architecture of every decision she made. The house was for them. The stability was for them. The caption on that Facebook post, the pride behind it, the feeling of having beaten the odds, all of it traced back to wanting to give her children something solid to grow up in. By every visible measure, she had done exactly that. What makes that photograph so difficult to look at now is not just what happened 1 year later. It is one specific thing nobody in that photo knew yet. Something that had already been set in motion long before that picture was ever taken. New Year's Day, 2023 did not begin with an argument. Earlier that evening, Alexis visited her mother, Shunetta, at her home. Just family. Just a holiday. Afterward, she drove to Huntsville to spend time with friends. The kind of plans that feel completely unremarkable until they become the last normal thing someone ever did. Then Ky'ruan Yarbrough showed up at Shunetta's house. He came to drive Alexis back to their home on Oakdale Ridge Lane. She left with him, and for a short while after that, the night continued without incident. A little later, several family members made a run to Buc-ee's. It was during that trip that Miracle Scott realized she had accidentally left her keys inside Alexis's car. Alexis drove to the store, handed the keys back to her sister, and headed home. That was the last time Miracle saw her. Within a short time of returning home, Alexis called her sister. Miracle picked up and knew immediately something was wrong. Alexis was crying, and in the background of that call, audible through the phone, was Ky'ruan Yarbrough. A gun was present. The situation had already moved past the point of a simple argument. Then Shunetta heard something that made her move. According to her own first-hand account, Yarbrough could be heard making direct threats against Alexis, against the baby, and against himself. Shunetta called 911 on the spot and got in her car. She drove toward her daughter's house. What none of them knew was that a neighbor nearby was already awake. He would later recount hearing 3 distinct gunshots at around 4 a.m., followed by voices telling people to get behind the car. He looked out, took in what he was seeing, and immediately locked his door. Officers had already been dispatched. They were already turning onto Oakdale Ridge Lane. By the time Shanetta arrived at the house, she found both Alexis and Yarbrough lying in the driveway.
She said, "Ky'ruan, she just a baby. Why would you hurt her?" He said, "I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill you, and then I'm gonna kill myself." I started hollering. I knew I couldn't make it in time. So I called 911. Yeah, me. I called 911. Me. And I can't make it in time. The lady said, "Let me transfer you." She transferred me real fast. When they were pulling up, he was shooting my daughter.
Her first instinct, in the chaos of that moment, was that they were both being held as part of a domestic violence investigation. Then she heard an officer call for a medic bag, and she started looking for her 3-year-old granddaughter. Ky'ruan Yarbrough was not an unknown quantity. Not to the courts. Not to law enforcement. Not to the system that 29 days before Alexis Garth was found in that driveway had released him from a state penitentiary and sent him back to Athens. What makes that timeline even more difficult to process is what happened immediately after the shooting. When Yarbrough appeared before a judge for his bond hearing, the court's own prior record of his history, the 2019 conviction, the probation revocation, the early release, was placed in front of that same judge as the basis for holding him without bond. The system's documentation of who Yarbrough was became the very thing used to contain him, after it was too late. And the people who knew Alexis say the relationship had been deteriorating long before December 2nd ever arrived, which raises a question the family has never stopped asking. Who knew? And when? Miracle Scott carried something into that new year that most people around her did not. She knew the relationship had become abusive, not as a rumor, not as a feeling. She knew. Alexis had told her. And Miracle had done what most people who love someone in that situation do. She raised it. She encouraged her sister to leave, and she kept showing up. But she also believed it would not reach this point. After Alexis was gone, Miracle did not look away from that. She said it publicly, plainly, without flinching. If she had known it would come to this, she would have pushed harder. That is not a small thing to admit out loud. That is a person holding herself accountable for a situation she did not create and could not fully see. Because that is the nature of what Alexis was living inside. The people closest to her were working with pieces. Alexis was not showing anyone the complete picture. And in these situations, that is rarely a choice made from deception. It is almost always a decision shaped by fear. Fear of escalation. Fear of what happens when the person causing the harm finds out that someone else now knows. Miracle had more pieces than most. She still did not have enough. She would later speak publicly about Yarbrough's behavior in the weeks after his release from prison, noting that he had appeared to comply with his supervision conditions in that early period. On the surface, things looked manageable. They were not manageable. And the person best positioned in that entire neighborhood to recognize that lived 20 feet away from Alexis Garth's front door. Kathy Wells had spent 40 years doing one thing: helping women get out. She worked for a crisis intervention organization in North Alabama that specialized specifically in domestic violence situations. She had seen more cases, more patterns, and more warning signs than most people accumulate in a lifetime. She knew what to look for. She knew how to approach it. She knew what to say to a woman who was not yet ready to hear it. And she lived directly next door to Alexis Garth. Their relationship was cordial, friendly enough to acknowledge each other. Nothing deeper than that. Wells had no indication, none, that the woman living beside her was in any danger. She told reporters afterward that she had never once seen a police presence at that address before the night of the shooting. Had she known, she said, she would have gone straight over and told Alexis that help was available, that she did not have to figure it out alone. But Alexis never signaled it. Wells had given 4 decades to understanding exactly why that happens, why the door stays closed, why the neighborhood stays quiet, why the people best equipped to help are so often the last to know. She had built a career around that gap. She had been living inside it without realizing it. What investigators recovered from that property in the hours after the shooting, body camera footage, home security footage, was about to make sure nothing about this case stayed quiet for long. 2 days after the shooting, Ky'ruan Yarbrough stood before a judge. Not for trial, not for sentencing, for a pretrial detention hearing under a law that had only been in effect for 35 days. Aniah's Law. It was passed in Alabama in November 2022 and signed into effect on November 28th, 4 days before Yarbrough was released from prison. The law existed for one specific reason: to give judges the authority to deny bond to individuals charged with violent offenses. It was born directly from a prior case in which a violent offender was released and killed again. Alabama had watched that happen and built a legal response to it. That response was invoked for one of the first times on January 3, 2023. For Ky'ruan Yarbrough. At that hearing, District Judge Gray West received sworn testimony from investigators and reviewed 2 separate recordings from the night of the shooting: body camera footage from responding officers and home security camera footage recovered from the property. 2 independent sources, reviewed by the court before a single argument about bond was made. Bond was denied. The written order confirmed the decision rested on the evidence and testimony the state had presented. The capital murder charge itself carried a specific legal enhancement, documented plainly in the charging paperwork. The reason the charge was capital was because Alexis had been killed in the direct presence of her 3-year-old daughter. That detail did not just determine the severity of the charge. It meant the little girl who had hidden beneath that car in the driveway was now a material part of the legal case built around her mother's death. 5 months passed. In June 2023, a Limestone County grand jury returned its decision. Ky'ruan Yarbrough was formally indicted on a charge of capital murder in the death of Alexis Garth. The charge he now faced carried 2 possible outcomes if he is convicted: life without the possibility of parole, or the death penalty. Those are the 2 ends of the road that Limestone County's legal system has laid out for the man who was released from prison 29 days before Alexis died. The same system whose records were used to deny him bond. The same system now working toward a resolution that Alexis's family has been waiting for since the first hours of 2023. As of the most recently available court records, no trial date has been publicly set. Yarbrough remains held in Limestone County Jail. The case is active and pending in Limestone County Circuit Court. For the family, that open timeline is not an abstraction. It is a reality they have been living inside every single day, alongside a decision they made early on that had nothing to do with waiting for a court date. They decided to make sure Alexis's story reached people who needed to hear it. 1 week after Alexis was gone, her family stood up in public. A candlelight vigil was held at Tanner High School in Athens. People who had known Alexis came forward one by one to speak about her. Not in the abstract way people sometimes talk about the dead, but specifically, her laugh, the way she showed up for people, the particular kind of friend and sister and daughter she had been. Miracle Scott did not just speak about Alexis. She spoke directly to the situation. She told the room, and anyone watching, that she had known something was wrong, that she had tried to act on it, and that it had not been enough. She was not performing grief. She was delivering a warning to anyone in that room who recognized something familiar in what she was describing about her own sister's life. Shanetta Garth had already taken that further. Her Facebook Live, posted days earlier in direct response to people online publicly supporting Yarbrough, had traveled well beyond Athens by the time the vigil took place. A mother narrating the final hours of her daughter's life in real time, responding to people defending the man accused of ending it. Not for sympathy, for the record. That video became part of a wider public conversation about mandatory release programs, about what supervision actually looks like in practice, and about what gets missed when a system makes decisions about people in bulk rather than individually. Alexis's family understood something important. Silence was not going to bring her back, but her story might reach someone who still had time. Alexis Garth was 26 years old. That is the number the court records use, the charging documents, the indictment. 26 years old. As if a number can hold what a person actually was. Miracle Scott described her sister as someone who could walk into a room and change it. Not by trying, just by arriving. The kind of person you could bring anything to. Any problem, any hour, any version of yourself, and feel heard. People who had known her briefly said the same things as people who had known her for years. That kind of consistency is rare. It meant something. She left behind 2 daughters who will grow up knowing her only through the people who loved her. A 3-year-old who has already found words for something no child should have to find words for, describing her mother as being asleep at the hospital forever, and a baby girl too young to understand what that means yet. Both daughters are safe and with family. Alexis Garth died in the early hours of January 1st, 2023 at Huntsville Hospital. She was the first homicide recorded in Limestone County that year. The case against Ky'ruan Yarbrough remains open, and somewhere in Athens, Alabama, 2 little girls are growing up in the shape of everything she left behind.